Every year, thousands of experts evaluate the status of animal, plant, algae, and fungi species around the world. Using a common language of assessment, they categorize each species' risk of extinction on the IUCN Red List. The Red List provides a barometer of life. And every year, the outlook gets worse. More than 31,000 species are currently threatened with extinction. Most because of human action. But human action can also reverse the Red List trend. So conservationists, governments, and communities around the world are joining forces, activating tried and tested IUCN tools in a coordinated effort to assess, plan, and act for wildlife. Together, we can save species from extinction. Together, we can win the fight for our planet's future. Together, we can reverse the red.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from Caracas, Venezuela. My name is John Paul Rodriguez. I chair the UCN Species Survival Commission, and our headquarters are here in Venezuela, in Caracas, at the offices of Provita, an IUCN member organization. Welcome all of you. Please include in the chat your name or the place where you're participating from. We'd love to hear from you where you are. Before we go on, I would like to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. If you remain on the webinars because you agree with being recorded, otherwise we ask you to please step out of the meeting and watch it later on if you prefer. Today, we will be speaking about the National Red List website, how to use it, how to share your National Red List data. This webinar is part of a series that was presented by the National Red List Working Group of IUCN, and on how to set up National Red List programs and produce the Red List Index. All tools that are very important for the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Today, we have the pleasure of having Sophie Ledger join us. I will hand it over to her for her complete introduction, but I'd like to say that Sophie is a researcher at the Zoological Society of London, ZSL. She manages the National Red List website, and also has been working with the Sample Red List Index. Those are the themes of the conversation of today's webinar. So over to you, Sophie. Welcome. Many, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully thumbs up, everything is working. Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone. So I'm based at the Institute of Zoology, and I've been working with the National Red List website and database for the past couple of years. I've actually been working on red listing projects on and off for about 10 years. And now I'm focusing on the redevelopment work here, as well as running some sample red list index projects too. So today I'm going to go over one of the platforms you can use to share your red list data. You've already had amazing talks from the other speakers in this series about the different elements leading up to sharing your data. So I'll start off with an introduction to the project behind the website and database. I'll also go over our key aims for redevelopment and give you a preview of some of the new features of the website, and then talk through how you can contribute your data and who this applies to, and our next steps. And so a quick disclaimer again, the new website is not live yet. The launch for that is going to be in December. So you have some sneak peeks today. And also I think it would be quite helpful to walk through the uploading process so you can prepare for that and maybe start formatting your data in the standard way for this database. So yeah, introducing the project behind it all, so you can understand a bit of the context and why the redevelopment is taking place. So this project was initiated back in 2008 by the National Red List Alliance and supported and overseen by the National Red List Working Group, which I'm a member of as well. And the project is hosted at ZSL. So two major outputs were the National Red List database and the website, which had aims to be a centralized place for sharing and storing national red lists and species assessments which were carried out, red lists which were carried out at subglobal levels. And so that is regional, so multinational, or subnational, so a province, for example, and then national. So the databases were quite rudimentary and kind of a series of spreadsheets. So they were very good at holding data, but not very easy to work with and a bit cumbersome. So the website as well hosted quite a lot of really useful resources on how to conduct national red list assessments, and was very, very helpful in terms of having a red list publications library. However, yeah, it was kind of limited by sort of a shared chagrin that we have in this field of limited funds and limited capacity. I think most of us here can relate to that. So yeah, in 2013 that particular website was launched. So it's a little bit of time ago and it needs a little bit of work, but following on from that, there was actually a call for data through the CBD in 2014 for all parties to share national data with this project. And so ZSL was flooded with lots of different formats of national red list publications. So everything from, yeah, the databases and PDFs to actual hard copy textbooks. So that was quite a lot of work to manually upload them into the website and convert them. So considering all of that hard work, it's really impressive that the website managed to host over 700 publications and extracting and uploading 270,000 assessments is quite impressive, I think. Well done to all the people involved in that. It also had some very collaborative and fruitful partnerships, so with the Royal Botanic Gardens of Kew and BGCI, it helped to develop other databases. So it feeds into Threat Search, which is a comprehensive database of conservation assessments for plants. So that's really positive. However, as I mentioned before, there was a bit of a bottleneck for progressing data uploading and maintaining the website, and it was just a little bit clumsy. So we also had some technical issues, and the two databases weren't linked or live, so there was a lot of manual work in terms of upkeep and making sure stuff was fed through. So it's just simply not easy, so needed to have some changes. And working with the National Red List Working Group and other national parties and partners, we kind of went through and discussed what needed to be done and what the core aims needed to be focused on for this redevelopment work. So back in 2019, my predecessor, Dr. Monica Boom, was able to secure some funding and commissioned Octafin digital developers to help work on this. And the key areas would be promoting data sharing and accessibility. This is so important. So a lot of countries perhaps have done all this hard work, have their national red list assessment ready to go, but perhaps don't have a national online platform to share it, or they'd love to contribute to this project and have it freely available for everyone to see and share. And so it needs to provide that. Also, it needs to be a supportive tool for people who are undertaking their assessment, so providing the guidance and useful support documents needed for that, and pointing you in the right direction as well. So linking up with the IUCN regional red list guidelines on their website, sorry. So we also were really interested to look at how we can link more closely with that IUCN Global Red List website and having reciprocal links. So it would be really helpful for endemic species which have been assessed in their national entity, like that would therefore count as a global level red list assessment, and that would be super important to fast track onto that platform. There's lots of different really neat things you could develop there and build in. Also the potential for, if you've undertaken a comprehensive national red list assessment, if you populate that into this database and website, then it could have a function where it could showcase your national red list indices as well. There's just lots of different really exciting things. However, dealing with legacy databases, there's always much more time needed unpicking data issues and data quality issues and standardization, and certain fields hadn't been consistently used, and there was a lot of work done focusing on the first point in order to make sure we have a really robust and clear database underneath it all, which is going to be much easier to work with and much better overall. So slight delay in our time frame because we were thinking this would be done in a year. However, we're still working on it. But where have we got to? So here are the updates. The National Red List database is relational, which means the assessments and the publications or the provenance are all the data are linked now. So there's no longer that issue with finding the correct attribution when you were downloading data and things like that. Like that's all going to be all related to each other, and makes it much easier to have useful searches and queries as well. We've developed data standards so that all new data will have format and guidance to follow in order to be uploaded or processed into the system, so it will help with comparability and ease there. And we've simplified or split out some of our fields which were causing issues with inputting there. So it should be much easier and much better to work with. We've also got a template for data uploading by national users. So that was in existence before, but that always had to go through the Red List team, and by team it's usually was Moni or maybe some volunteers who were helping her at that time. So it was quite a lot to do for one person or so, but we're hoping to have an interface inbuilt that where you'll be able to upload it directly and then it will get signed off and made live. So that would be really, really awesome. And then yes, on the website side of things, that's where that would kind of input into. Because of the improvements to the database, we now have loads more querying options. So it should be much more user friendly when you're searching or downloading data, and yeah, just easier all around. I've mentioned the data inputting, and yeah, we're working on the concept of having our own API so that will help with onward usage of the data. But we are already working out ways to communicate and link up with the global IUCN Red List website. So that will be really interesting there. And yes, because we work closely and are part of the National Red List Working Group, we will be hosting guidance documents and working with them to make sure we have the best data available for conducting your National Red List and any indices you might want to develop. Here's a preview. So yes, it's not launched yet, but you can get an idea of what the new interface will look like. We're hoping that it will be so much easier to use. So it's a similar setup to the previous one. You have a home page where you've got a map representing what's currently entered into the database. It doesn't mean that there aren't red lists or assessments done for other countries that are on the map. We just simply haven't got that processed in there yet, but you perhaps will maybe able to help us with that. Color coding system still applies. So the darker color red, that represents most recent category, so within 10 years of being published, and then you've got the paler red, which is older than 10 years, so usually that would mean that it needs to be updated, and then grey is absent from our records. We appreciate there are lots of places that have done these, so you'll see it doesn't have as many assessments in there as the previous one just now, because we worked with a subset of data to create the new website, and it took a lot of data cleaning. So even with that subset, that kept us very busy. But yeah, it will show you a breakdown of what's in there. You can select a country, it will populate all of the assessments that apply to that country or region. You can also filter by summary taxonomic groups. So like you could pick amphibians and see what shows up there. And we've got 7,388 species assessments in there. So it's mainly based on mammal data, because that was thought to be the easiest place to start with things. And then we have got some more representatives there through a pilot with the UAE. Yeah, so you can have a specific search on the assessments, and I've kind of highlighted these 3 terms. Regions, that simply is our short way of referring to the country name or the province or whatever. So it's just where the assessment was done. And then scope, so that's the scale at which the assessment had been done. So was it national, subnational, or regional? And in our case, we treat that as multinational. And then criteria system. So this would be, did they follow the IUCN criteria? Did they use a modified IUCN system where perhaps they followed the IUCN standards, but they then introduced another category like rare or something just for their national assessment? So it's aligned, but there's a slight difference. Or is it a national system, so non-IUCN? So there's those 3 terms, which I'll probably mention as well later on. But yeah, you can filter by your binomial or your common name, and then that's just a published from. You've got like a year filter as well if you wanted to only look within the last 10 years or have you, and then regions again, which is the country name or region, which applies to, you can filter the scope and whether you want IUCN or non-IUCN, etc. Apply that, and this is just a very simple search. You can use the drop down for advanced taxonomic search, and you've got all the different levels of taxonomy there. You can filter as well if that's what you're after. So we have really worked on trying to simplify the search system, but also give you lots of options as well. And we're hoping to include more filters, potentially to have like threatened or not threatened as well as a filter option, but that would only apply to ones that had used the IUCN criteria system, I think, because it's simply the time taken to match everything up to we don't have scope for that just now. So but this is already a lot more robust. And then that would retrieve, you put in your species search, or whichever you filled in what you're interested in, And then it will return all of the assessments if we have them processed in like a summary table at the bottom. So you could have a rough idea of some key information. So you'd get like the regional status, so what it was assessed as, and when and where, and the source publication you can go directly to, or more information that's on the assessment itself. So that would bring up a specific page just on that. Oops, pardon me. Specifically on that assessment. And then you would get way more detail, because we have lots of details on each assessment too, which I'm not going to go into. But yeah, this is just so much better, because automatically you've got the correct attribution to each species assessment, and you can download those results in agreement with our terms of use, and they will be available in a CSV, and then you can go ahead and do further filters and whatnot. So the terms of use I mentioned, they're based on a very similar to the IUCN Red List website terms of use. So with the exception of plant data, which is able to be used within threat search, there's no reposting unless you directly are in agreement with the data owner of that specific assessment or publication. So also no commercial use as well. But yeah, we're making it a bit more simple for us and following the IUCN Red List way of doing things a little bit more. So harmonizing there. And then onto the publication search and catalogue. So it's a bit like, it's not a very exciting slide, I'm afraid. It's quite zoomed out, but it's like a library. So you'll be able to find out all of the source publications and details around that. So yeah, often if they were provided, we've got the original links to go to that publication page, for example. It's quite helpful for that, and finding out who has done what. So yeah, when you click on a specific publication, now you would be able to see lots of detail about publication, of course, but then if you scroll down, it will say if we have extracted the data from within that publication, and give you a nice summary table of all of the species assessments if they have been put into the database. So that's really neat. So on to the next bit, how to share your data. We're really excited about this. So we are moving away from the previous model where the onus was on very limited capacity us to extract and upload data into the system. So now we're going to have a platform where the data owners, so potentially like a governmental department or Red List authority, would be able to upload their national Red List publication details. So this would, again, I have to agree with our terms of use and a data agreement, which, as I covered before, it's just agreeing that the data is available to be used by threat search, for if it's plant data used for threat search and things like that. So it's very straightforward. And yeah, we're really hoping this will help us expand geographic and taxonomic coverage, and just, yeah, make it a really user-friendly platform. So what data can be shared? So I mentioned data standards. To help with consistency and data comparability, I've worked hard on trying to keep things standardized and what goes in there. So every assessment that gets entered within this database needs to have some of these three core areas. So what has been assessed, information on the actual taxon, so the species scientific name and taxonomic authority, following international guidelines on that and standards there. The assessment details, so where does this apply to, what scale, the type of system that was used to conduct the assessment, and ideally the specific version that was used. So this probably is more relevant to IUCN, but like version 3.1 or what have you. So the year it was assessed and the resulting status that was assigned, so how it's doing. And then provenance, we really want to make sure that we have the information on how it should be cited and like the source details there. So that's super important. And then when the new website is live, you'll be able to go to the contributing your data tab from the main menu. And that should bring up a lovely page which will explain all of these things again, but in a really nice, concise way. And you can select to download an Excel template, which will have on tab 1, it will have like the fields explainer, so definition of all the terms you're going to be looking at, what goes where, which are the essential fields that I mentioned, so linking with the data standards, so what are the ones that you have to fill in or it will get rejected, and if there are fields which have got standard terms, so I mentioned before for criteria system it has to be one of 3 categories, IUCN, modified IUCN or non-IUCN, it will have those standard terms in there, so you'll know exactly like what needs to go where. Fingers crossed it should be straightforward. It looks a bit scary just now, but it'll be fine, I promise. And then you have the fun task of flipping over to tab 2, which is the data template form. And it's very much very straightforward. You've got your headings there, which you now know all off by heart, and some guidance on what means what. And then you can just start filling in your species assessment data and associated provenance. And it's 1 row per species assessment. And please do data checks, because we've all been there. We've all thought Excel is helping us with autocomplete, and then you realise you've magically done assessments 50 years time or something, because it's dragged the year down. And yeah, we don't want that, as much as we would love to do that and have assessed things into the future. Yeah, be careful, we've all been there. Do some data checks, maybe get someone to look over a few of your columns, and then you can export that particular tab as a CSV file and save it, and then you can share it with us. And we are, as I said, still developing the uploader form, so it could still be an email to me and I will do it, but I'm hoping it will be an uploader form where you will log in or you will submit your data and it will go into a kind of holding pen, and then it will get validated and be live. So that would be amazing. That is that. And then our next step, so that was a bit of a speed through, but our next steps, we've got some really great national partners in the UK and France who we're going to get in touch with after this presentation and start on some data uploaded trials and finalisation. So we've got quite a good idea of the tweaks we want to make. And then once that's ready, in time for our official launch, we will release the website into the wild in the surrounds of CVD COP and have a bit of a party about it, we hope. So that will be excellent. You'll be able to access it then and flood us with all your amazing data. And our other kind of ongoing interests that we want to work on, kind of funding and resource dependent, will be looking into getting like a national focal point user account system, so you'd have your own login and you'd be able to access what you'd uploaded and whatnot, and be able to tweak things if you were like, oh, I realised I made a mistake on this particular citation, I need to update that, so you go and alter that yourself, that sort of thing. So we're working on that. Oh yes, finalising the links with the IUCN website and our API as well, which would be really helpful. Looking into making ways where endemic assessments would be flagged, or yeah, there'll be some sort of fast track system. Really, unfortunately, this is based, not unfortunately this is based, but we have a one working language system just now, and that's English, and it would be so great to increase the accessibility and expand languages and have a translation option. So I think we've got a widget that's built into the website which will translate content, but would love to test that and make sure it's as accessible as possible and potentially translate some of the tools as well. So we've got an icon in the corner which is a little snazzy looking guide, and I'm going to make a lovely PDF guide that you can have on hand whilst you're uploading your data, and if you have any questions and things like that. So it'd be much nicer to look at rather than spreadsheet. I know some people love spreadsheets, but just in case you prefer looking at a lovely PDF, I will make it for you. And also the National Red List Index tool, that's another really exciting one that we'd love to work on, but that would only apply for countries where they'd done comprehensive assessments. So yes, there's lots of work to be done, but already we have got quite a good lot of work under our belt, so hopefully it should be a lot handier for you all. Yeah, and I just want to say thank you so much for listening, and I'd love to give thanks to all of the volunteers and interns who've worked really hard adding data to the database, all the people involved previously, and I'm afraid I didn't have time to list out everyone's names and affiliated logos. So all of the National Red List Working Group and partners and contributors and our developers, Optivin Digital, and also Cell are super grateful for the Rufford Foundation's support, which makes this possible. And yeah, thank you again for listening. That's me done.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Really, really exciting. And I have been very interested in National Red List forever, so this is fabulous to see it happening. I see that Domitila Raimondo has joined the panelists. I would like her to, I will invite first Sophie to stop sharing your screen.
Yep, of course.
And then Domitila come in and give us some words of wisdom. Domitila is based at South African National Biodiversity Institute, has great experience with national list of species and ecosystems. So over to you, Domitila, to explain a little bit more what you do and share your thoughts.
Thank you, John Paul. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are based in the world, and thank you for joining us. I am the co-chair of the National Red List Working Group, and that Sophie is part of, and has been. And we've offered this series of webinars. This is our last one. I hope you have followed others. If you haven't, they're available on the Reverse the Red website. Really interesting content on why it's important to do a national red list, and how you go about setting up a national red list project, and also how you track your species over time using the Red List Index. So this was our last one, just showing where once you've done your red list assessments, you can post them and have them available for the world to see on this National Red List website. So we open to questions. We actually open to questions of anything to do with national red listing, anything that we've covered during the series of webinars. And so please do post your questions in the chat, and we will take them.
There's one question in the Q&A, but before I give it to, before I read it out, I have one question about what taxonomy do you recommend people use? Should they build their own lists using their own taxonomy, or do you expect them to follow a centralized taxonomy? And then I'll read you the other question.
From the website and database perspective, really hoping that everyone could make our lives as simple as possible and follow a centralized system, but completely appreciate that you're at national levels and smaller levels, you're going to have maybe taxonomic descriptions that haven't quite yet been accepted globally, or especially with some of I seem to remember maybe it was lichens or fungi. There's a lot of assessments that have been done at smaller scales, and that are really important to share. However, the assessment isn't the taxonomy isn't accepted just yet, or it's super complicated. And the taxonomy question is one that we've still been trying to work out, because obviously we want to make sure that data is shared, and if people have done all this work, it's really important to get it out there. We can accommodate this. I think if we wanted to be super snazzy, we would align with the IUCN taxonomy system and kind of link up there. However, if that would limit some people, we've got the option to, they could submit a new species form or what have you, so we can add it into our database taxonomy, because I think we're working towards trying to harmonize as much with the IUCN backbone as possible, so that if you've got endemics and whatnot, it's going to make it easier to sync up there, but recognizing the importance of having an accessible format for taxonomy that hasn't quite caught up with that list yet. So yeah, it's a good question. So we're trying to be flexible, we're trying to be super accessible and inclusive, but also perhaps we can put the disclaimer of taxonomy on this website is for the users' discretion to check and follow up with, because I really love taxonomy, I really enjoy it, and but I just don't have enough time. I don't think anyone has enough time to police and correct everything, so alas.
Well, that's great, thank you. I see Simi Bezeng wants to answer live the question by Raja Jayapal. The question is, please correct me if I'm wrong. So the process is a regional, national level publication, then authors will upload the data to the portal. Then IUCN experts will pipeline them into the national list criteria and come up with a national list for the particular region or country. Is that the basic process? Would be nice if regional national authorities are engaged more with the process rather than just data providers or verifiers. Over to you guys.
Sadly, that's not the case. So this is really hosted assessments that have already been done, publications that have been done that are maybe trapped and you're not able to share the information with the world, and you want to make sure that people are finding this information more easily. We've made the platform so that you can upload your data into it for other people to access and share. So it's not going to conduct an assessment for you. I think perhaps maybe it's more to do with the option of one day in the future, if we have the option of like a national red list index generating tool. I think maybe that was what wasn't getting mixed with that one maybe. But yeah, we're definitely not able to do all the assessments. It's more about making sure that there's a platform where everything's kind of presented in a standardized way, so it's easy for people to find what they want to find and have it one place for people to go to.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just very important to understand that it's not possible for us to serve a single database template for people to do assessments into. And the main reason is because most countries actually need to link to their own taxonomic backbones, but also their own data sets of all their occurrences for different species. And that is really complicated from a software development point of view. So most countries that are doing their own, doing their national red lists have set up their own databases to do that. And then, you know, there is the option to ask the IUCN to use the drafts of the global assessments, but you still need to, you can get those as outputs, but the IUCN Species Information System data system is not available for national red listing. So really it is each country has to develop a data system to do it. As Sophie says, it might be a possibility to develop one in the future that could upload taxonomic backbones and occurrence records to do assess and spatial data for assessments, but it is quite difficult, and we would need to raise a lot more funding to be able to do that. So just to understand very importantly that this is not an assessment database. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Enzo Aliaga earlier asked about or commented that they're developing the Bolivia National Red List for vertebrates, but they probably will not follow the IUCN system. My response to him in the chat was, please try to follow the IUCN system. There's a great advantage to unifying criteria. But I don't know if either of you would like to expand a little bit on the advantages of following the single system.
Maybe I can do that. It is actually a really, really important point, that because the main reason why we need to assess the status of our species and determine if there's a risk of extinction is to be able to track our impact on biodiversity. And most countries are party to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and each decade the Global Biodiversity Framework target has a target on the risk of extinction for species. So currently that's now under negotiation under the Goal A of the new Global Biodiversity Framework. So there's constantly a requirement for parties to globally report into the UN system on the status of your species. Now, if each country uses a different system, there's no possibility for us to compare it. So using one standardized system is really helpful. It's also incredibly difficult to develop a scientifically sound risk of extinction assessment system. And there was a very, very detailed process to develop the IUCN Red List criteria. And then many countries, and I see that this was mentioned in your question, many countries are scared of using the IUCN system because they think it requires a lot of data. And while there are a lot of fields that it asks for, even if you have very little data for a species, so say it's known only from one collection made 50 years ago, and that's all you know, you can still give it a red list status. So there's not a single species I've assessed for over 20 years and more than 7,000 species across all taxonomic groups, from marine to freshwater to terrestrial species, from plants to animals to insects to all sorts of species, and never ever been not able to assign a category using the IUCN criteria. So it's often a misunderstanding that it's data demanding. It's not. It asks for as much data as you need to justify the status that you come up with, but no matter how little information you have, you can still do an assessment. So please, we really encourage the use of the standardized, transparent system of the IUCN, scientifically sound system of the IUCN.
Great, thank you. Several questions have come up, Nirmal now and Esther Ruth, asking about people who have developed their national red list, already have red list. What is the process for uploading them or sharing them in the database? Could you please emphasize that a little bit more?
So if you've already done your assessment, congratulations, and you have your species data already. I think something that would be super helpful would be starting to align your data and your information into the data fields system that I was kind of outlining just now from the kind of Excel file perspective. Then it will be relatively straightforward to transfer them all into that one sheet, and that will be it should be a straightforward process of kind of uploading that into the database via the website when that's live. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping will happen. Alternatively, it will be a case of emailing it to me and I will upload it. But yeah, it would be, if you've got all of your information, I really hope it's stored in an electronic, nicely standardized way, and it will be a case of copy pasting some of your fields into our template. But that's really all it is, and just making sure you've answered some of our other field questions and following the guidance. So it's quite straightforward. It's just data entry again, one of our shared joys in this field, I think. But yeah, hopefully it will be a straightforward kind of uploader to use. And also, on the other point, the website and the database are made so that they are inclusive. So you can have your national system, you can have your other way of assessing, and we just need to categorize it so that that's out there, so people know what they've searched and what they've found, whether it's IUCN or not. Like, as long as it's categorized, it can still be hosted on this database.
Another question from Nirmal: what does data owners indicate?
So data owners, so this would be the owners of the source publication. So often in a national red list situation, it will be like a national entity or government agency that has been tasked with undertaking the red list assessments, or it will be like the red list authority for that group, or coordinator for that group, who has specific permissions from the owners of that data, of that publication. So it's really has to come from those the source from where it originated from, or who has permissions from them specifically to share that with this database. So we're unable to kind of scrape for things like it needs to come with permissions and agreement that it's going to be hosted, and that people will be able to use it for non-commercial purposes. Hope that answers that.
Excellent. Well, we don't have any. Oh yeah, a new question just came in. Oh, thanks, Nirmal. We don't have any open questions in the Q&A or on the chat. I wonder, Domitila, anything you would like to add to what has been said? We have a few minutes left, or anything from the audience that you are dying to ask and you haven't asked, but I'll hand the floor over to Domitila for a couple of minutes if you like.
So yes, so I just want to ask Sophie how we could communicate when the data is ready to upload. Should they just keep an eye on the URL, where the website comes out, or could we send perhaps something to the participants of this call and that we do have registered, so that they know that they are able to then upload? So maybe you could just answer that question. Like, so you said in December it should be available, and where should they look, and any other information just to keep everyone updated. And then we'll also use the website, as Sophie mentioned, as a place to provide all the information that we've given during this webinar series. We've provided video content of step-by-step guidance on how to set up a national red list project, what you need to think about, or how you raise the funding for it, all of those different aspects, and then a very technical call on our last webinar last month on how to conduct a red list index. So all of that information and guidance we will be posting onto that website and step by step over the course of next year. So do keep your eye open on that website to look for those. But Sophie, maybe just a last thing from you, just in terms of how and where they can get the information.
Well, of course, I expect it's going to be breaking news across, everywhere globally, but no. The website itself will have an official launch, and so we're aiming to have a slot around CBD COP. However, as Domitila suggested, it's actually very practical to send a little email updating everyone from this call, potentially having sharing it on as many platforms as possible. Maybe I can share a little tweet that could get posted from other accounts as well, and reach out there when it's ready to go. But yeah, I think it should be December, and yes, I don't think it'll be ready before then, I'm afraid. It's quite complicated, these things. They're taking quite a lot of time to finesse. So yes, thank you for your patience in the meantime. Perhaps it would be useful for me to share the data fields and guidance on filling them in, so people could start maybe preparing data in the meantime, for that form to be, maybe the form can get emailed around to the participants in advance of that, which might be helpful. We'll have a think about how best to alert as many people as possible, but this seems like a good plan. And yes, we're definitely going to have all of these talks linked to on the website for if we can embed them, the videos, we will as well, but depends on what's decided. But yeah, these will be really accessible there. Yeah, so thank you.
We have one more question from Renzo Vargas from Chile. He says, congratulations on the initiative. We talked a lot about this before at an IUCN Chile meeting, where the UCN method is used to do fiscal assessment. Have you discussed the implementation with governments of countries like Chile so they upload their evaluation? So basically, this, what are the plans for reaching out to governments so that they can upload the national red list as well? What do you?
I think so. Is this for the global level assessments or for national level assessments? So
I think
for
it's national lists, yeah, in general.
Just checking. So for national level, I think this could also be another situation where it'd be really quite good to use our channels via the CBD COP or one of the other conferences or official conventions where you have member states signed up to it, and there would be the potential for a call to be put out again. So that worked really well in 2014, when we're still quite flooded with data, I think. So that was quite successful. So perhaps that's another really good point where we can get the message across, I think, and that would help unlock the data. So yeah, talking about shifting towards data owners and being the contributors, that would be a very good way of helping there, and potentially that would help with permission. So for example, if they needed to give the sign off that you're able to then extract and send it, then maybe that could help there too, if it's come through an unofficial channel. Yeah, thank you for raising that. It's really helpful. And well done on your assessments.
I don't see any other questions. I just wanted to add, to what Domitila has been saying a few minutes ago. This series of seminars, webinars, gives you a lot of information and tools to sit down. It's like a mini course on national red lists, their importance, their application, national red list indices. And it is very important for countries to do this, because often the status of species classified globally does not coincide with the status of species classified nationally, and ultimately the priorities for conservation at the national level will be guided by national status of species rather than global. So it's really important to do this. If you can combine your national red list data with ecosystem red list and key KVAs, you develop a huge, very powerful toolkit that the UCN knowledge products, or what we call the knowledge products facilitated by UCN, allow and help countries with priority setting and planning, spatial planning. So please do reach out to the National Red List Working Group with any questions, but also sit down and watch the webinars. Write us with any thoughts. We, particularly within the Reverse the Red movement, we are very keen to support countries do this and build their national red lists and national capacity. Another added benefit of doing national red lists is that you build teams that are located in the country and develop the expertise and the capacity to do it nationally, and perhaps start developing additional hubs of support with your neighbors. So this is the way. There are many benefits to doing this, and we really encourage you. I'm a big fan. Really encourage you to go down this path. I don't know. We have about 5 minutes left. Sophie, Domitila, final word of wisdom, or we are done with this?
I just want to say, John Paul, that your last point is really critical, and I just really encourage all of you on the call who are based in countries to really set up your national red list projects. If they're already going, keep them going, and please share the data onto the new red list website with the templates that Sophie's talked about today. We'd really love to have those reflected. And just as an indication, we've recently looked at the reports, the national reports to the Convention on Biological Diversity, and out of the 196 countries that are party to the convention, 50% have got some national red listing work going. It's over 50%, it's about 54% exactly. So there is some, but that does show that many countries haven't yet started. So we encourage you to start. It's not difficult to follow the IUCN regional criteria that explain how you do assessment at the national level. One of our webinars, the second one, has a step-by-step instructions on how to do that from Caroline Pollock from the IUCN Red List Unit. So if you go to that link that we've posted in the chat for our on the Reverse the Red website, you will see the series of webinars, and you'll see how you conduct a national red list, and then all the details of how you set up the projects and how to organize your experts, etc., on one of the other webinars. So our guidance is all here. Please remember it's on the Reverse the Red, and we will put additional guidance, but in a written format, most likely on this National Red List website that Sophie's presented today. So thank you everybody for attending. We really appreciate it, and please do use this resource of webinars for your work going forward. Thank you, John Paul.
Well, thanks again to all. Thank you very much, Sophie, for all the great work, and Domitila for leading this for a number of years now. And looking forward, in Design, who's been very involved as well. Thank you, Design. Thanks to the team. Look forward to other webinars on other topics and creating capacity throughout the world, which is our ultimate goal. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.